Hello, I'm Shankar.
And I'm Nikhil. This is Chai Across Generations. This is episode 24 Traveling Chai Culture, Spirituality, and Connection.
Well, Nikhil, this time around we experimented with a new asynchronous format, and I'm curious to see how it came out and what our listeners think. We tried to see how we could continue our podcast even when one of us is traveling outside the country with sporadic internet access or when there are time zone differences that would make it difficult for us to have a real time synchronized conversation. So, in this episode, we tried recording our reflections and throwing them over the net, so to speak, for the other person to listen to and respond through an audio file upload.
Yeah, I'm glad you got to enjoy a restful holiday traveling in Costa Rica, Shankar. Or maybe, like with many holidays, it turned out to be more exciting than you might have anticipated. But either way, I enjoyed getting to exchange our thoughts over audio memos and keeping in touch while you were away.
The restful bit might have been a bit tongue in cheek, because it was certainly a nail biting finish to a super exciting vacation, where I think I got my annual dopamine consumption in about 10 days' time. I think it was a great vacation in many ways. We saw many new and exciting things. We met and connected with really nice people. And we had many new experiences that shook up my routine and usual ways of living and being. In all these ways, it was great learning and also a wonderful reminder to cherish and enjoy all that is good in my life at home as well. Yes, it was great that you and I could keep in touch through my travels, and I'm curious what our listeners think about this new format.
That sounds like a good trip. So you'll hear us talk through a number of topics while Shankar was away, including spirituality, meditation, and travel, and we'll come back at the end to wrap things up.
Here we go.
Hi, Shankar. So I'm going to kick off our back and forth this week while you're traveling, and we'll see how this format works out. So I've always wanted to ask you how you kind of got into spirituality and yoga and how that's changed for you over time. And I mention this because on one of our earlier episodes, we were talking about astrology in the marriage series, and you talked about how as someone gets older, with spirituality, you can learn to become softer, you can learn to go inwards and to learn more about yourself. And I know you've done a lot within yoga as well. So I am curious, as someone looking ahead in my own life over the next several decades, I want to continue to become softer, continue to learn more about myself. And I'm curious how yoga or meditation or any of your spiritual practices have helped you there. And then my other question for you is, where are you traveling to? Tell us a little bit about where you are and how your day's going. All right, hope you're having a good one. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Hi, Nikhil. I'm really excited to do this new format of our podcast where we record one end and then pass it on to the other. And of course, we're doing this because I'm traveling, and I hope we'll be able to continue this when you happen to be on travel as well. So, thanks for your question about yoga and spirituality. And I thought a little bit about it. So, I think I've actually been interested in spirituality in some way or form from probably my earliest memories in childhood. In fact, one of my earliest childhood memories is a spiritual experience. And I think I've been looking for answers in one way or form in my sort of original tradition. I was brought up in the Hindu tradition, and my father's family is fairly orthodox. And so I was given the benefit of learning much of the sort of Hindu ritual practice firsthand from my dad and from others in the family. And in fact, I think my one of my earliest attempts at trying to understand spirituality resulted in a rebellion against all of that, which I think was very healthy. And it sort of inspired me to sort of find my own path, which was a long and circuitous road with many missteps and stumblings. and trying different things until it sort of led all the way back to, the original things that attracted me in my own faith tradition, which is the Upanishads and the highest truth that is contained in them. So, and a part of it was, a very central part of it involved yoga practice. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because it was really the means for me to gain that sort of intimate and first-hand direct experience, which was transformative for me. Probably a little later in my life than I would have hoped or liked, but still, I'm glad that it happened. And you're right that it does make you softer inside, or at least has the potential to. And I can tell you that I had a lot of work to do on myself. So I, I think just that enduring interest, curiosity to find out more is something that I can tell you is very helpful. And having that from a very young age and keeping that sort of flame lit as one goes through life is very has been very good for me. And I hope sharing that with you is helpful, and also, of course, for our listeners. The other aspect that I think was very transformative is that when we go through deep grief, um, and a sense of loss that has the potential to be transformative in a spiritual sense. Peculiarly, somehow, the most pleasurable moments in our life often don't tend to make us spiritual, but it's often the very rock bottom moments when one feels at a particularly low ebb is when spirituality can offer a transformative growth experience. And you're right, in the end, it is to make us softer. And I know that I was a very hard and ignorant person and probably still am. So it's a kind of work in progress, is how I see myself. But yeah, happy to chat. Definitely, yoga and the practices of yoga for me really humbled me in a way, because through a very, very strenuous and rigorous practice, I came to learn that, how much part the ego plays, and how in the end it's only through a kind of surrender, complete surrender, that one can move forward on that path. As to your second question, I'm in Costa Rica right now in the town of Quepos with my daughter Shivani, and we've come out here on a 10-day vacation, and it's been a wild and probably going to be an unforgettable experience. Um, we landed in the town of Alajuela, stayed first night there, a very nice host, um, very beautiful location. The natural beauty here is really amazing, and our host had kept a very nice place. We also met a very interesting lady who lived 17 years here. She's from the U.S. In Pennsylvania, and she told us of her story of living with the Afro-Caribe down in the southeastern part of the country. So we've been having a very nice experience. We also had made some new friends who helped us out. And then we have been spending some very nice time with the family here, cooking with them and hanging out. So we've been having a very different tourist experience, which is not in the resorts, but sort of in little unknown places, and very much from the eyes of an everyday Costa Rican. So that's been a lot of fun, but it has not diminished our appreciation for the natural beauty here and the way Costa Ricans live, actually. They have this thing called Pura Vida, which is pure life. And we really got to see that firsthand with the family we lived. So that's kind of ongoing as part of our journey. All right, Nikhil, I'm waiting to hear your response. Take care. Bye.
Hi, Shankar. It's so great to hear that you and Shivani are having such a good time in Costa Rica. It sounds like you're getting up to some fun adventures together. I found that travel and visiting other countries and cultures is such a good way to learn about your own culture And as I think about our podcast and the idea of understanding the generational divide and the cultural gap, I'd actually be curious to hear from you what you're learning about Costa Rican culture and your own culture from being there. Um, just as an example, back in undergrad, I did study abroad in Singapore for a year, and I went to Thailand and Indonesia and Malaysia at different points to visit the areas around Singapore. And when I was in Indonesia, I went to Bali with some friends, and it was such a spiritual place. There were so many Hindu statues just all over the town. And there was just a liveliness and a spirituality about the entire place, even in areas that you might not expect to be spiritual, just, as you're walking down the street, that gave me a deeper appreciation and understanding in some ways of South Asian culture, right, and religion. So I'd be curious to hear what you're picking up and reflecting on or thinking about as you're in Costa Rica, about your culture and about Costa Rican culture. And then I really appreciated everything you said about yoga and your lifelong journey to spirituality, rooted in your upbringing. I think your point about tragedy being a bit of a catalyst for turning to spirituality really rings true. I would say tragedy and hardship can be really big forces in our lives to push us towards spirituality. One thing I'm thinking about is how at certain times in our lives, we have to level up in some ways, right? What I mean by that is when you go from elementary school to middle school, or middle to high school, or high school to college, or college to your first job, different things are required of you. And I almost see those as leveling up moments. And what I've been thinking about is how in my current phase of life, where I'm at a point where I'm leveling up, I think spirituality might become more important to me, or just finding ways to become a more centered person. I think you had phrased it as doing the work, right? Doing work on yourself, humbling yourself, letting go of ego comes to mind for me. And, right now I'm in the process of buying a house and renovating it before I move in. And I'm finding this is a bit of a leveling up moment for me, right? Where it's a big project that I'm undertaking. A lot of it's outside of my control. It's in the control of other people. It's about their availability or when materials are available. And I kind of need to finish these changes by a certain time so that I can move in before my current lease expires. So I find myself getting caught up in all of this, the logistics and the minutia. And I had to just kind of stop and step back the other day and laugh at myself a bit and say, hey, this will get done, instead of putting all that stress and pressure on myself. And I think this actually ties to mental health as well, like we've talked about before on our podcast. So for you, it might be yoga. For me, I've been a big fan of meditation in my life. I was meditating a lot when I was younger. At one stretch, I meditated for 10 minutes a day for over 250 days. But that's kind of come and gone in my life as I've gotten busier and as I've been hitting these moments of leveling up. So now I'm thinking about how do I bring some of that meditation back into my life, because it can be quite a calming force. And how can I make that even more consistent in my life, right? To help me handle things like buying a house or whatever new project might be on the horizon or new adventure. My question for you, Shankar, I'd be curious to hear how you think about meditation and yoga and the link between the two. I would say yoga can be quite meditative, but I'm curious how you experience yoga and how you think about meditation as well in this whole discussion. And then kind of related to that, I also wonder what becomes possible for us as people when we tap into a greater sense of understanding of ourselves and of, softening ourselves in terms of connecting with other generations, in terms of connecting with other cultures. I'd just be curious to hear how you've kind of thought about that or experienced that over your life, because it feels to me like it's really important as I grow up and continue to level up. And I'd be curious just to hear what your experience has been. All right, I hope you all are having a great time in Costa Rica. Hope you're making more good friends, and I can't wait to hear from you.
Hi, Nikhil. Hey, really nice to hear your response to my last audio file. And I think I got you in a very thoughtful mood. It was really interesting to listen to all your reflections. And I liked the question about how does the experience of another culture shape our understanding of our own culture. And hey, I was very delighted to know that you'd spent a year in Singapore and traveled to Indonesia, Malaysia, etc., Thailand. Fantastic. Such a lovely broadening of life experience there. As far as being in Costa Rica goes, I would say that the biggest thing that struck me is that it's a place of great natural beauty. And the people there, at least the ones that I met, live very close to the land. They're very deeply appreciative of the land and the plants and the things that grow there. And that kind of is encapsulated by their sort of national slogan or motto, which is like Pura Vida, pure life. And almost everyone I met there is really interested in eating organic food, staying close to nature, and preparing food that is very fresh. And we were very fortunate to experience that. So it was really, really beautiful. It echoed a lot of my own family, my grandparents, my parents, their attitude towards food and life. Although I would say that Costa Rica is more blessed to still have a lot of environmentally well preserved natural beauty. And we're very grateful for that and to have that experience. You then talked a little bit about this great idea of leveling up, and I really liked that. It's made me reflect how, in this new phase of my life, what are the new challenges? How am I showing up? How am I using my interest in spirituality and that discipline to sort of engage in life? I think it was really, really nice what you said. We all sometimes are challenged by the idea of focusing on the individual versus the collective. And whether we think of the collective as family or community or people around us. And I think your experience of building a house, it brings back something that my parents used to say in Tamil, which is, I may not be getting it right, but it's like, Vita Kattiparu, Kalyanatha Panniparu. Kind of, the two great endeavors in life are building a house and getting married. And sort of the idea being that unless you actually do these and experience them, you don't know what it's all about, kind of. And I think what you're saying about building a house is highlighting that interdependence we have on other people and how sometimes our individual aspirations have to be, if not put on hold, made aligned with those of people around us. And I think you're very wise to see that and to actually laugh about it. That's so incredibly self-aware on your part. As for yoga and meditation, so here is an interesting point, which is I think if you think of yoga in the way that it is now understood in the modern context and in the West, it's we normally think of it as postures and asanas. But actually, yogasana is a very small part of yoga. It's only 1/4. So if you refer to the two sort of principal texts, there are three really, but two are important. One is the Hatha Yoga Pradipika by Swatmarama. In that, asana is only 1/4 of that whole book. And it's very clear that the purpose of Hatha Yoga is to actually begin to climb the stairway to Raja Yoga. And the text for Raja Yoga is the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And Patanjali Yoga Sutra straight away starts with defining yoga. And if you read Vyasa's commentary on it, which is the authoritative commentary, Vyasa says yoga is samadhi. So yoga is very much about attaining superconscious states through meditation. The Patanjali Yoga Sutra is largely devoted to meditative practices, but at a fairly advanced level and not an easy text to read, but much less to experience. But definitely, I would say that if you look at the source texts, then yoga is all about meditation. And if you look at the 8 limbs, you go yama, niyama, asana, the first 3, and then you have breath control pranayam, pratyahar, withdrawal of the senses, and the three internal limbs are dharana, dhyana, samadhi, which is concentration, meditation, and then attaining the superconscious state. So I would say your kudos to you, congratulations to you for having sustained your meditative practice for 250 days. That is excellent. And in fact, one of the verses in the Yoga Sutra says the practicing something uninterruptedly at a constant rate, such as meditation, is really the key. So you're doing the right thing. I think it's great to bring it back. And in fact, just recently I was talking to someone about micro meditations. So what happens if we're left waiting on a call or on hold, or what do we do with those few minutes that sometimes make us feel just a little irritated or jumpy or wanting to move on to the next thing? So practice of micro meditation, which is like a minute or two of breathing and meditation, can be very powerful. So I'm really glad you're looking into that, into meditation itself as means to attain greater insight as you kind of navigate this situation of building a house and scheduling your move in and stuff like that. I really hope everything goes well, and I'm sure it will. And things do have a way of falling into place eventually. So lovely to hear from you. I hope that was fun. We'll chat again. Of course, we're going to reconnect very soon on our older format of being live together. So thanks, Nikhil. Talk to you soon. Bye. So that wraps up our first ever travelogue episode. What are you taking away from the conversation, Nikhil?
Well, first, I'm taking away that we can expand the formats and ways we do these episodes. I know you and I have talked about doing more story based episodes, Shankar, so this has been reaffirming to know that our podcast will continue to grow and expand over time. And the other big thing I'm taking away, Shankar, is how travel can really nourish our spirits and how it can be really tied to our spiritual growth and development. You gave me some gems on yoga and meditation that I'll be thinking about for a while, and I'm going to use the 1 or 2 minute micro meditations idea that you shared as I continue going through this house project.
Thanks, Nikhil. It was kind of grounding for me to listen to your thoughtful reflections as I was getting every kind of sense and enrichment with all the beautiful scenery and time and nature in Costa Rica. In fact, it was your reflection that also gave me an idea for our next episode, which I'll try to keep a closely guarded secret for 1 week.
A teaser! I like it. Let's see if any of our listeners can read the tea leaves and guess where we're headed next week. What are you taking away from the conversation, Shankar?
I think the new format was very interesting in that it allowed for a more reflective response on both our ends. It also shed a light on how different our life experiences can be when we travel. One thing I didn't get around to responding to in the audio notes was to your question about conversation or communication across generations. I found from my conversations with the wonderful young couple Marcela and Mauricio, who invited us to an amazing Costa Rican dinner, that there are so many parallels between the challenges that the younger generation in our culture faces in coming to terms with the norms and expectations of the older generation, and the same challenges are there in Costa Rica as well. Many of the same topics, such as dating, finding a partner, and building a life together, societal perception of divorcees and widowers, etc., are also points of change and divergence in Costa Rica, as they are in our community here.
Yeah, I totally agree with you about the more reflective responses. Having the time to hear your message and then reflect on it a little bit before recording mine was massively helpful to process my own thoughts before sharing them back with you. It was kind of a new way of thinking. And what a lovely point about the similarity of our cultures. This makes me want to travel to Costa Rica myself. And it makes me remember what one of our listeners said back in episode 12, Our Listeners' Voices, that a lot of these topics we discuss resonate beyond the South Asian community to other cultures and upbringings too. And I trust that you started our Chai Across Generations fan club down there.
Well, I did my part, but I made the mistake of not packing loose leaf chai and cardamom with me, so I couldn't quite prepare the magic potion to convert more faithful followers to our cause. But I did connect with several amazing folks, some Americans such as Jennifer and Corey, who have lived for years down there in remote areas, embracing the local lifestyle completely, and also some ticos, which is how Costa Ricans refer to themselves, such as our savior Alvin, who tends bar and cooks at Comida Baru, and who generously shared a bag of the best Costa Rican coffee with me.
Oh wow, sounds like a host of exciting adventures, Shankar. Well, maybe this is a lesson for both of us then, that we should always pack some chai and cardamom on our trips to make some chai for friends or listeners. Or it could be coffee in your case, I guess. And I actually have some friends in Costa Rica who tune into the podcast too, so it looks like we have a nice little group going there. Shout out to our Costa Rican listeners.
Well, this was fun to do, and it may be a format we revisit in the future again. To our dear listeners, we'd love to hear from you on what worked and what could be improved in this format going forward so we can continue to fine tune it. You can reach out to us on our Instagram page, Chai Across Generations, or our email at chaiacrossgenerations@gmail.com.
As always, subscribe to our podcast and please leave us a rating on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. This really, really helps new people find our show, and we want to thank you all for listening.
See you all next time.